UC says Mozambican lake retaken from jihadists. Sierra Leone presidential challenger cleared to run. Pope defrocks Rwandan priest accused of fathering child. These stories are all just ahead on Spotlight Africa. To stay with us. Thanks for joining us. First on today's Spotlight Africa is from President Filipe Nyusi, who has said Mozambique's military fighting the insurgents. According to reports, more than 4,000 people have been killed and 800,000 forced from their homes since militant Islamists launched an insurgency. The Electoral Commission of Sierra Leone, ECSL, has cleared presidential opposition candidate Samura Kamara to run in the June vote. Kamara, who was defeated by Julius Maada Bio in the 2018 ballot, has been on trial since February for alleged corruption. He was charged in December 2021 for allegedly misappropriating more than $2.5 million in public funds while he was serving as Foreign Affairs Minister. The electoral agency cleared him after his case was adjourned until July. Meanwhile, Kamara underhanded the house of ex-president Edgar Lungu in the capital, Lusaka, and demanded access to search it. Lungu's lawyer, Jonas Zimba, has told reporters that police officers are conducting a search allegedly linked to the ownership of the three motor vehicles. Meanwhile, police have not yet issued a statement over the development. The former ruling party, Patriotic Front, PF, have described the deployment as a breach of Lungu's immunity as guaranteed by the law. Lungu lost power to Hakainde Hichilema in August of 2021 during the election. This is a story that goes back and forth, and you're thinking, what are the laws that guard against owning? A politician has been convicted of obstruction of justice. In a high-profile trial at a court in the capital, Harare, Job Sikala was found guilty almost a year after he was first arrested contesting upcoming presidential and legislative elections due to be held in August. The charges against him were based on a video in which he was allegedly demanded justice for the murder of another opposition activist whose mutilated body was found in a well. Meanwhile, critics say the trial was politically motivated. We move now to Rwanda, where in part of the country. Happy Get-Go said many houses collapsed on people, 55 deaths recorded, and many injured. The province's governor said the main roads in the province, including the new road snaking along Lake Kivu, are not usable. Meanwhile, the divorce case between the daughter of Zimbabwe's former president, Robert Mugabe, and her husband has given a glimpse of the staggering wealth amassed by the family, including Resa Musuni Chikori in March, and asked for the division of assets to be dealt with in a separate court case. According to reports, he demands joint custody of the couple's 3 children and a share of the assets, which include at least 21 farms and one man, one farm policy. On war in Sudan, United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres has called on the warring factions to stop the fighting immediately before the conflict escalates. Hospitals destroyed, food and aid warehouses looted, and millions facing food insecurity. Earlier, the United Nations humanitarian chief, Martin Griffiths, who's in Sudan, said he is trying to get a 7-day truce starting today. But previous ceasefires have broken down. Griffiths said 6 trucks belonging to the United Nations World Food Programme were looted on their way to the troubled region of Darfur, despite assurances that they would be safe. This crisis has continued to escalate upon the increases of the 72-hour ceasefire. There's still a lot of question if this
Generals Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and Mohamed Hamdan Daglo, Emeti, and the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces to silence the guns. It is incumbent on Sudanese leaders to put the interests of their people front and center. This conflict will not and must not be resolved on the battlefield.
From other conflict-hit countries, Kanhus is now running for his life for the second time. He told newsmen that he is still stuck at the border waiting. Meanwhile, the United Nations says more than 100,000 people have fled Sudan since heavy fighting broke out between rival forces, while a further 334,000 people killed in crossfire in the north of Khartoum has shocked residents of Sudan's capital. But she's just one of many civilians still in the city who are paying with their lives as the fighting continues. She describes daily life for people caught up in the conflict. Aisha Abd-Majid, who turned 80 last year, was famous for her theatre performance at the National Theatre in Abdurman to mark the anniversary of Sudan's first revolution against a coup leader. She was considered a pioneer of the stage and the country's first professional stage actress. She later retired to become a teacher. Her family says she was buried within the cemetery. Meanwhile, it is not clear who fired the shot that killed her in the clashes in the northern suburb of Bari. But paramilitary fighters of the Rapid Support Forces RSF, who are ensconced in even of prominent people, are being caught in the crossfires. How soon can this situation be abated? In the meantime, gunfire and explosions have echoed across the Sudanese capital, Khartoum, for the 20th straight day. Witnesses reported loud. The army said it was ready to abide by a new 7-day ceasefire. But there's been no word from the rival paramilitary, the Rapid Support Forces, RSF. The military said it killed RSF fighters and destroyed from the area around the presidential palace and the army headquarters. Meanwhile, the United Nations aid chief Martin Griffiths said the determination of the still on the Sudan crisis, just a lot to talk about. The United Nations top aid official has warned that the will to end the fight still was not there after the first tipping point. He called for security guarantees from the warring sides to allow humanitarian aid into the country. The UN warns that the fighting could force hundreds of thousands of Sudanese to flee their homes. In an interview, are keen to keep it going. Reports say during his time in Sudan's largest port, now a major evacuation and humanitarian hub, he had separate $10 million divorce battle. Stay tuned for details of this and more after this time out.
Every day, we bring you up-to-date education, health,
Lifestyle, and so much more. Join Janice Kobum and Uyai Anyeken
every weekday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Rise and Shine Daily, exclusive on Spectrum Television.
Stay tuned, and now to the rest of the stories. Still as a result of the crisis in Sudan, the first group of 376 Nigerians fleeing the crisis have arrived Abuja after being stranded for days at the Egyptian border following visa issues. The evacuees were airlifted into 2 planes, the Nigerian commercial carrier Air Peace and a military aircraft, from Aswan in neighboring Egypt. The visibly happy returner said each returnee was given $200 to enable them to settle back down at home. Recall that Nigeria had deployed 40 luxury buses to take the evacuees to Egypt for airlifting to the West African country. Some 20 buses prepared to with them students. According to reports, the fighting in Sudan has killed at least 550 people, displaced tens of thousands, and triggered an exodus of foreigners and international staff. Thank God for the beginning of good news. We do hope that the rest of Nigerians will be able to get back home safely as soon as possible. We move ahead now and deal to end the conflict in the vast Oromia region. Government negotiator Redwan Hussein tweeted that talks had been largely constructive, but unfortunately it was not possible to reach an agreement on some issues during his round of talks. According to Redwan, understanding had been reached in some areas, but not on key political differences. He also acknowledged the need for talks to continue to resolve the conflict permanently and peacefully. The two sides met in Tanzania in the first major initiative to end the rebellion in Oromia. Meanwhile, the Ola says it is fighting for self-determination for Oromia and has carried out a series of raids on government forces in the region. The talks came about 6 months after Ethiopia's government reached a peace deal to end a bloody 2-year war in the northern regions in Tigray in northern Ethiopia, following the discovery that relief aid had been stolen. The USAID Administrator Samantha Power said food shipments had been diverted and sold on the local market. She said deliveries would resume once there was confidence that they would reach the intended population who are facing famine. The interim leader of Tigray, Getachew Reda, says he's setting up a task force to tackle aid theft. He called on humanitarian agencies to a war between Ethiopian government forces and the Tigray People's Liberation Front. In another development, lawmakers in Nigeria have appealed to the UK justice authorities to temper justice with mercy over the sentencing of a Nigerian politician found guilty of organ trafficking. Senator Ike Madu, his wife, and a medical middleman were convicted in March for organ trafficking plot after they brought a 21-year-old man to the UK from Lagos. The sentencing is due this Friday. The Speaker of Nigeria's House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, described Madu as a good man with no prior convictions while pleading for leniency. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, Parliament has the letter to the Chief Clerk of the Old Bailey Criminal Court in London. In a separate development, Pope Francis has sacked a Rwandan-born man who has been serving as a clergyman in northern France for almost 3 decades from priesthood. A communique circulating online signed by the Bishop of Erix says the Wenceslas Mutsanga 64 automatically loses clerical rights and is excluded from serving anywhere else as a priest. The office of the Diocese of Erix has confirmed to newsmen the authenticity of the communique, which says it is based on a papal decree dated in March. Mutsanga, who fled to France after the Rwandan genocide in 1994, has not commented on the decision. Now, according to reports, he was suspended by the diocese in December 2021 after it emerged that he has legally acknowledged being a father of a 10-year-old boy. Mutsanga was ordained in the capital, Kigali, during the genocide, but courts in France have cleared him of the genocide crisis. We move away from that. South Africa has unveiled new banknotes and coins, the country's first major upgrade to its currency in more than a decade. The South African Reserve Bank, SARB, announced circulation from today will retain the image of Nelson Mandela, the country's first democratically elected president who died in 2013. Africa's so-called Big Five wild animals, rhino, elephant, lion, buffalo, and leopard, will now be depicted with their young on the banknotes. The coins will have an ecological theme through pictures of plants and animals. South Africa's 11 official languages will also be represented on the various portable, and all of the new sides being attached to the banknotes really looks nice. We do hope that they do not fall into the kind of crisis that the Naira redesign in Nigeria has been plagued with in the last couple of months. Still in South Africa, Police Service has publicly apologized for revealing personal information of 8 women who were raped last year at an abandoned mine. The women were raped last July while they were shooting a music video at an abandoned mine in Crookstop. Said that as police investigated the matter, names, age and physical addresses of the victims were released inappropriately, but no ill intent was uncovered. Now, according to the police, the information was shared on police WhatsApp groups. Med has approved, the Amazing New Year as an official paid national holiday. It follows a long-running campaign by activists for the recognition of the calendar recognized by the Berber people, or Amexia, as they prefer to be called. The Amexia, who constitute around 40% of the country's population of more than 34 million, celebrate the new year, also known as Yanea. Meanwhile, the first day of the year is based on seasons and agriculture, and counting this year is 2,973. The day is also celebrated by Arabic-speaking Moroccans, who call it the beginning of the agricultural year, corresponding to 13 January. The Royal Palace said that the approval of the holiday showed the king's commitment to the Berber language, a fundamental part of Morocco's authentic identity, and others that have spoken about the extreme conditions. Nathan Walton from Wari Sofsire said the dropout rate was 3 times that in typical years as competitors battled through 50 degrees Celsius. Ones do not belong there. Both entered the marathon des Sables to raise money for hospices. Reports say the 156-mile series of races across the Sahara Desert last of the runners drop out, but that this year was about 30%. Finally, on today's Spotlight Africa, East African music legend and Tanzanian opposition politician Joseph Hawley, popularly known by Health, the Tanzanian rapper, songwriter and former member of parliament, revealed that he had been admitted to a hospital's intensive care unit for more than 4 months. Neither he nor his family have said what he was suffering from. Professor J says that he received treatment at Mumbili National Hospital in Tanzania and his life can get back to normal. And that's all we have for you at this time. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtv.ng.